Welcome and thanks for coming. It's a little like old home week in some ways, and I've been out here talking to people, and it's so strange not to see all of you in flat squares. I'm Anne-Marie Benz. This is Maya Argaman. We'll be your co-chairs, and we're the staff horticulture team. And we're pretty excited. We've got a big lineup. We've got a lot to get through. We have some great talks, and some of it's going to be a little bit interactive. So we really want you to, during those parts, engage. Start getting to meet everybody here. And this is a huge topic. If we want native plants to be the default in our built environments, the default choice, we know we have to have people who are growing them. We need to have people selling them. We need to have people who are trained and understand how to design, maintain, install them. And without all of that, we're not going to quite get there. So a lot of these talks are about how do we get there? How do we eventually get to see more native plants in our built environment in all these other ways? How do we get to have them into, city ordinances? How do we get to find them in our nurseries? There's a broad range. So we've got some terrific speakers. It's going to go fast. It'll seem like it's too fast. You can catch up with them afterwards, I'm sure, and ask questions, or grab Maya and I. So,
so our first speaker is Kathy Capone, and Kathy is an active CNPS member, now serving in chapter positions in chapter council and as a member of the board of directors at CNPS. Kathy is a retired special education teacher, a proud mother and grandmother, and a local environmental activist. And gardening and being with one with nature heals her. So thank you, Kathy.
So I'm going to be talking about community gardens am I too close to the microphone? It seems like, okay. So I'm going to be talking about community gardens at the Tule River Parkway. The Tule River Parkway is a pedestrian and bike path along the Tule River in Porterville. The Tule River runs from the High Sierras by Trail of 100 Giants, if you have any knowledge of that, with the giant sequoias, down to the Central Valley, through the foothills and down to the Central Valley, out to the Tulare Lake Basin. So this is a mostly dry lake for most of the year because of overuse from agricultural and human sources. So the Tule River Parkway, we went through what so I am a member of both Alta Peak Chapter and the Tule River Parkway Association, a local environmental nonprofit that was founded in the early 90s to encourage the city to create this pathway that you're seeing where that rock is, and also to provide public access, reduce the amount of non-native invasive species, provide an outdoor education space, and clean up the river corridor in general. Okay, so that's where the Tule River Parkway Association started. At that time, there was no direct connection between the local California Native Plant Society chapter and this local nonprofit dealing with the river corridor. I joined both of the organizations in about the mid-90s. I moved to the area in 1990, joined both about the mid-90s, and I was the only member of both organizations. As the Tule River, so the California Native Plant Society, we did field trips, we looked at environmental documents, made comments, that kind of area of work the chapter did. The Tule River Parkway Association did advocacy for the development of this parkway. We also started to do a little bit on the ground of river cleanups and that kind of thing. And I found that there was, in both areas, both the chapter and the Tule River Parkway Association, very little of on-the-ground kind of work. And that was kind of what I was interested in, getting something done. So whenever I think about getting something done, I think about, well, what can I physically do? What can I help get done? And I was frustrated because, so here we go with the problems. Okay, so there were 3 problems that I saw, and I'm kind of glossing over what other problems there may be, but let me talk about 3 major problems. So the Tule River River Corridor had this pathway built in it by the city of Porterville in about 2003. But they built this asphalt path, and the designers of it planted some trees along the path with a very inadequate and unsustainable irrigation system. And most of the trees that were not native died. But the valley oaks continued living even without additional irrigation once established. But you can see how the city maintained this river corridor area. They did it by plowing at least once a year, the whole area. If it wasn't a tree, they plowed it under. And then along the pathway, they sprayed with Roundup. So that was how the city managed the land. And here's an example. So this is a river corridor. So this was a prior floodplain before the dam at Lake Success. The river would flood the land and provide these shelves of sandy river bottom soil. And so the city would plow the weeds after they'd gone to seed. And then the next year, of course, they had planted what grew, which was non-native grasses mostly. So that was a problem. We had a lack of native vegetation and an overabundance of weeds. Oh yeah, okay. I'm seeing 2 slides on this screen now. I'm getting confused. So the next problem was we had a paved path, a lovely asset for the community. The Tule River runs through about 2/3 of Porterville is on one side, 1/3 of Porterville is on the other side. The Tule River runs through Porterville, and we have a path on quite a bit of that stretch through town. But it wasn't being used. People didn't know it existed. There was very little, basically no advertisement about this existence. There were no signs that people could see to access this walkway. And here is an asset, a way for people to get into nature as much as the city would allow to live, but it wasn't being used. So that was one problem. Another problem was that I would like to see addressed was our typical landscapes. So in Porterville, in general, you can think of Porterville as being a decade and a half to 2 decades behind the trends of California. And it's just the way it is. No judgment. So, so this is some typical landscaping. Now, I took some pictures very recently. I only took pictures of homes where people, by the way they took care of their lots, showed that they cared what their front yard looked like. If they knew that there was a different kind of landscaping, they might be able to choose a different kind of landscaping. But this is what, if people are looking at their neighbors, this is what they see. They see lawns in almost every house in Porterville. And then, non-native trees and lawns and bushes. Okay, so this is some upper middle class range price homes. Here's some middle price range homes. And though the lot may be smaller, the landscape is the same. It's a lawn covering most of the front yard. And people don't know to change that until they see something that's different. And so you need these exemplars of different types of landscaping or promotions by the water districts and other things to support changing the landscape. So we had these problems, and how are we going to solve this? How can I make a difference in a river corridor? I'm a retired teacher. I have organizational abilities, but not deep pockets. So I was at the Fall Festival at River Ridge in the Springville area. And at that Fall Festival, there are several exhibitors and people selling things and food and music. If you ever get a chance to go to Springville for the Fall Festival, it's normally the first Saturday in November. And I was at the CNPS booth, and we were giving away information and brochures and selling plants. And John Merriweather from U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service had set up a booth near us, and he was talking to Barbara Breidoff, who is now the president of the Alta Peak chapter of CNPS, about a grant called a Wildlife Partners Grant. And he was saying, and he was really talking it up and talking about how easy it was to do, and he would help if there was a project, he would help write the grant. And I went, So I went over and I talked to John, and that was in 2017. And it took a while to get it done, even with his help. But by 2019, here's the next slide. So U.S. Fish and Wildlife, a Wildlife Partners Grant. I really recommend looking into it. They are currently in the process of accepting more grants for this. You get help from a wildlife, and John is a biologist, but in each of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife districts, there's a different person who can assist you with this Wildlife Partners Grant. So I think this is a really good asset. This grant is a 50% matching reimbursement grant. So you have to spend the money ahead and then get reimbursed. But the matching can be with volunteer time, and the volunteer time is valued at a certain amount, and expert volunteer time is valued at another amount. It's really, as far as grants go, easy to do. So we did, I wrote the grant I got the buy-in from the city of Porterville. I go to city council meetings sometimes. I have served on the Parks and Leisure Commission. I'm a known commodity in our small city. So this is a city of 70,000 people. So it's a real city, but small city. So they knew who I was. They knew that I wasn't some fly-by-night person. And they allowed me to write this grant for them, and the city applied for the grant, and we've worked together on this project. So let me show you what the project looks like after all this talking. Okay, so this was the original, this was in the grant application. So this is what it looked like in the grant application. I wish I had a pointer. Do we have a laser pointer up here? Okay, well, so what you see is a picture of the area. The yellow line surrounds this about 10 acres, which is the whole project area. And the project included these squares, which were garden spaces. And the gardens... Oh, thank you. Does that work? Oh, thank you very much. Okay, so this is a street. This is Parkway Drive. Along Parkway Drive is this asphalt path that had already been constructed, the Tule River Parkway. And then the Tule River Parkway came down here. I'm kind of tracing the area where the asphalt path is, and it comes around here and loops around. And over here is a big parking lot. Very good place to access, another good place to access. And so we designed these gardens, potential garden areas. Here was... we planned a restoration area, removal of a salt cedar. This area right here was an area of restoration for desert milkweed. And you can see this is where the city plowed everything. And then we have kind of widely spaced the cottonwoods, willows, that kind of thing in this area.
I'm sorry, where's the river?
Oh, right there. That's the river right there. So our boundary of our project area was up from the river. We did not do any work within the actual, where the water is, kind of river. Good question. Okay, so this is a hand-drawn map of what the gardens look, the locations of the gardens now. So again, here's that road, here's the parking lot, here's the asphalt path, and we have 18 native plant demonstration gardens, plus restoration areas, plus other areas where we're, restoration of valley oaks, and other areas where we have plans for gardens. Each of the gardens is adopted by an individual or group, and it's planted by them and maintained by them. These groups can change through time. So when someone adopts or a group adopts a garden, they may be gung-ho for 3 months or 6 months or a year, and in time you may need to replace this group with another group. So you're always advocating for new groups to come in to help out with the gardens. We also have one-time volunteers come out. I advertise through Facebook and other means to have volunteer groups come in, contact agencies, contact religious groups. The Mormon missionaries have been wonderful. And I'm very inclusive. So this is a brochure that oh, thank you. I was going to ask that. Okay, so this is a brochure that I provided to people interested in possibly adopting a garden. I'm going to skip through this so you can see progress in gardens, since I have 5 minutes left. Okay, so another part of the brochure. Okay, so we did a lot of outreach efforts, and continuing with outreach is super important. This is a like a screenshot of our website. So we have a website now, and we continue to develop it and post information on that. And then I give garden tours. We have 5K runs in the gardens. We had award ceremonies, and I'm going to be talking more about award ceremonies. So the Alta Peak Garden. So this is what the Alta Peak Garden looked like in December 2019. There, you can see some holes here. I think we had done a little bit of planting, and then this is May of 2021. You can see the plants have grown. So most of the plants were planted from 1-gallon containers. And then this is the Alta Peak chapter coming out for a garden work day just a few days ago. This is Barbara Brightoff and myself, Denise and Kit. Who we have a monthly work day at the Alta Peak Gardens. And this is a picture. I mean, it's, you know, what time it is in California. So this is the Alta Peak chapter garden in its late summer glory. So this is a map of the plants within the Alta Peak chapter garden, and each of the gardens has an informal plant map like this, garden plan, and also a list of plants in the gardens, and they're available on the website. So you can see all of the garden plans and the plant list on the website. And this is a list of the plants in the Alta Peak Garden, and we've recently, just this last few days, added some woolly blue curls, some narrow-leaf milkweed, and some cobweb thistle. So I want to show you the Burton School District Children's Garden. This is a picture of the garden in October 2019. They had been clearing away the weeds and the brush and the dead stems of whatevers, and piling it up. And then some of the material we can move off to our project area and kind of spread it out. Most of if it's a heavy material, like a heavy amount of material, I take it in my trailer to the green waste area. So this is October 2020. I just took this picture a few days ago. Same garden. So this is California fuchsias. They have 4 types of California fuchsias in that garden. So volunteers are critical. Get those volunteers out there, because they are the people that will, 2 things, that will do the work and will feed your soul. Getting people out there with you, teaching students, kids, how to cut PVC pipe, plant things, know how to put a plant in the garden. It will feed you. So let that be, I mean, it's hard to get volunteers, but they will give you back more than you give them. Okay, this is also the Burton School District garden. You can see people, you are teaching them how to plant. They can then know how to plant at their own homes. And here's another picture of that same garden just a few days ago. So this is desert marigold and California fuchsia. Hillside Garden, this is the first garden that we started working on it March 2019. This is a friend of mine, Brian, and Brian was in a men's support group, and he decided he wanted to do this garden on the hillside and call it the Serenity Garden, Hillside Serenity Garden. And he wanted I can't remember the name right now. Anyhow, it's a men's support group, and he wanted the men's support group to come out and work. So that didn't work out, but now we have another adopter at that garden, and this is what the garden looks like now. We have the white sage, and we have the California sagebrush, and then here's the top of that garden where this asphalt path is with the buckwheat there. So again, this is when the white sage was first newly planted. We transitioned to some concrete blocks here to try to retain the water. That didn't work so well, but I don't have time to explain how I fixed that. This is the same garden, so the same April 2020, before weeding and after weeding. This is bladderpod, a wonderful plant. So we have donations of wood chips from local tree companies. Yeah, they come and bring it to us. I've worked with them. I'd love to talk with you more about that. And then this is bricks that were donated by community members, things they weren't using. Volunteers, so important. Oh, time's up, doggone it. So come and talk to me. And I would love to talk more, but I guess I talk too slow.
Wow, what a project. Thank you, Catherine, so much. Give her another round of applause. Oh, sorry, go. Yeah, you can do it. Okay, next up we have the Literacy for Environmental Justice. First off, I'm going to introduce LeeAndrea Morton. She is the Director of Development at the Literacy for Environmental Justice and has worked in Southeast San Francisco in a community-based nonprofits for 10 years at the intersection of social empowerment and ecological restoration. She seeks to share how the work to restore public land can be done in the community and how this is beneficial for everybody. And along with LeeAndrea, we have Nina Omomo. Sorry if I... Okay. And Nina is the Restoration Coordinator at the Literacy for Environmental Justice, where her focus on ecological restoration is done in conjunction with youth education and environmental advocacy. She is an affiliate of the board of CERCAL, California Society for Ecological Restoration, and will be serving as their diversity chair for the 2023 conference. So please make your way up.
Hi, thank you so much for being here today. My name is LeeAndrea Morton. I am the Director of Development at Literacy for Environmental Justice, also known as LEDGE. I'm going to be telling you a bit about the history of and current reality of the community we're working in, Bayview, and a little bit about our organization.
My name is Nina Omomo. I'm the Restoration Coordinator, and after LeeAndrea, I'll be speaking on a specific wetlands restoration project we've been working on.
Thanks. Okay, so LEDGE is located in Bayview Hunters Point. Bayview Hunters Point is a low-income community with over 40% of people living below the federal poverty level. It's a community of color and a historically black neighborhood. In the early days of LEDGE, young people and community members, community organizations, members of LEDGE all got together to take down and shut down a PG&E power plant. Yeah. The power plant was leaking a lot of harmful substances like PCBs, asbestos, lead, and this was causing harmful health impacts on nearby residents. So the PG&E power plant is just one among many industrial sites in Bayview Hunters Point because it is zoned residential industrial, which means industrial facilities can be located next to homes. So now, 25 years later, since we were born, we're running a variety of programs, including environmental education, and we do ecological restoration in Southeast San Francisco. So a bit more about Bayview. Bayview is considered an environmental justice community. That's a term you may have heard about. Environmental justice means, in summary, all people have the right to clean air, water, and to live in a healthy and safe environment. And you can learn more about that by just researching environmental justice principles, because there's more. But this is Bayview, and if you look at a map of Bayview, these are some of the green spaces on the map. So this is a shoreline. Up on the right is Yosemite Slough. That was taken about 1.5 years ago. There has been some cleanup there since then. But these are areas that are considered brownfields, either currently or formerly polluted. We're working to restore some of these places. So this is the Hunters Point Shipyard, which is a federal Superfund site. That means the federal government has deemed it requires long-term cleanup, which makes sense because there is nuclear radiation on this site, dating back to World War II. So here's a picture of the Hunters Point Shipyard during World War II. It was during this time that people from all over the countries, Black families and individuals were recruited to work at this naval base. And so folks, so part of the Manhattan Project was being carried out at the Hunters Point Naval Shipyard, which means that there were nuclear testing going on in buildings as well as on ships. Ships would go out to sea, nuclear tests would be run, they would come back, and then Black naval officers were cleaning up these radioactive materials without knowing what they were or that there would be negative health consequences, and they and their families were impacted. And so after World War II, there was not adequate support to transition people out of military work once there was no more need for the shipyard. And so naval housing transitioned to public housing, and we're still seeing all the impacts of this time today. And there's still contamination at the naval shipyard that needs to be cleaned up. Okay. So there are over 300 toxic sites in Bayview Hunters Point. So on the bottom right, you can see the Hunters Point Naval Shipyard in red, and all these shapes and dots represent like hazardous waste, underground storage tanks, and just other hazardous sites. And another thing located in Bayview is the Southeast Treatment Plant. I don't know why it's hard to say. Southeast Treatment Plant, which processes over 80% of San Francisco's sewage, raw sewage. And that gets discharged into San Francisco Bay, which is legal. There's legal amounts that it's going on, but it also happens in excessive amounts too. And you can find out a lot of this information using Cal EnviroScreen. It's an amazing resource that shows you data like this and demographics all over the state of California. Oh, let me just mention, too, that sea level rise, because we're a shoreline community, is a huge threat to our community, not just in terms of infrastructure. Our infrastructure is threatened, like homes and businesses, but also sea level rise can unearth and move materials around. And the shipyard is a prime example of an area that will be impacted by sea level rise. So air quality and asthma are highly correlated, and we can see this in Bayview. So this is a map, these are 4 maps of San Francisco, and the neighborhoods in San Francisco. Bayview is in the very bottom right corner. And what you can see is that nitrogen dioxide and sulfur dioxide are higher in Bayview than most other neighborhoods in San Francisco, and particulate matter is highest in Bayview compared to any other community in San Francisco. And asthma hospitalizations are highest in Bayview Hunters Point compared to any other neighborhood in San Francisco. So LEDGE has responded to these issues over the past 25 years by working to create an opportunity for residents to improve their own health and to participate in healthy activities, but also to improve the health of the Bayview environment. So some of these activities look like, we have a youth education program where we take kids out kayaking and on San Francisco Bay and camping, and we also get kids out into the parks to help with our ecological restoration projects and actually put plants in the ground, like our, what's her name? Kathy. Like Kathy was saying, yeah, love the model. We do that too. Yeah, so, okay, and then we also have an internship program for young adults. It's called Eco Apprentices, and it's for like 18 to 25 or so range young people who are interested in entering the environmental field but may not have any background and may have barriers to employment. And so we're trying to offer like a non-traditional pathway for underrepresented San Francisco young people to get into the environmental field. And so what we offer is a training program where people can come and learn how to like collect seed from remnant plant populations, native plant populations right around our area, actually even in Bayview. There are plants that have been there always, which is amazing, thanks to the Ohlone people. And they grow, Eco Apprentices and our staff grow these plants in our native plant nursery. We grow over 50,000 plants every year, and we just doubled the footprint of our nursery, so we're gonna be growing more. Yeah. Yeah, and so this nursery supports a lot of our projects, which is to plant plants in public open spaces in Bayview. We have planted over 250,000 native plants in Southeast San Francisco since we started. Yeah. And yeah, so we're growing like close to half of the native plant species in the county of San Francisco. And we have restored over 100 acres of public open space in Southeast San Francisco since we got started. So also really cool. Yeah, and you are clapping for thousands of people because this has been a project of thousands of people. And Nina is going to tell you about one of those projects.
Thank you so much, LeeAndrea. I'm really happy to be here today. Again, my name is Nina Omomo. I'm the restoration coordinator at Literacy for Environmental Justice, or as LeeAndrea said, LEDGE is what we refer to. My role at LEDGE consists of designing stewardship plans, leading our urban greening team and eco apprentices at our restoration sites, as well as leading volunteers through our community-based restoration. The last 2 years, LEDGE has spent at Heron's Head Park, which is located right off 3rd Street in the neighborhood of Bayview in San Francisco. Heron's Head Park is a historical wetlands that within the last couple of years has seen really dramatic shoreline erosion. And the keepers of Heron's Head Park, which is the Port of San Francisco, has hired LEDGE to implement a 5-year shoreline stabilization program that they have designed and titled the Shoreline Resilience Project. We are experimenting with new stabilization techniques referred to as a living shoreline. So traditionally, shoreline erosion has been mitigated with what we are now calling gray or harder techniques or hardscapes. So an example of that, which you can see on the right side of this bottom left photo, would be like concrete or boulders or riprap would be put in to mitigate the shoreline erosion. And now a lot of restoration projects are experimenting with the left side of this scale, which is what we're referring to as the living shoreline. And instead of putting in those hardscapes, we would be putting in native plant revegetation instead, which provides a buffer for upland and breaks and would really do the same thing in an even better way than those hardscapes. Oh, and I did want to say, Heron's Head Park, there's a picture of it on the top right. That's what it looks like. It actually looks like a heron's head, so it's kind of cool. So, okay. In our first year of restoration in spring 2020, our eco apprentices and the urban greening team began our restoration with invasive removal. Specifically of Algerian sea lavender. Anyone who's worked in a coastal wetlands or on the coast is maybe familiar with this persistent invasive. As you can see in these two left pictures, there is areas of the park where Algerian sea lavender covered almost 80 or 90% of the landscape. A really cool part about the invasive removal that we've done there with our eco apprentices is that all of the weeds that we've pulled, and we've done over 4 acres by the end of the first year of removal, has all been done by hand. And this is such a hardy invasive that traditionally it would have been met with the use of Roundup or other chemicals and herbicides to remove such a heavy cover of invasives. Going into our second year, we have continued with the Algerian sea lavender removal by hand. This picture on the left and in the middle is of a huge patch of the sea lavender in flower. It gets kind of, ironically, these really pretty purple flowers. But we'll go in and we'll remove it all by hand. That middle picture is this year's Eco Apprentice cohort removing all the Algerian sea lavender. We bag it up and then we take it to the compost. The second part of this year's restoration has consisted of a huge native outplanting. The plant palette this year consisted of saltgrass, marsh gum plant, and alkali heath. On the left, you can see baby marsh gum plants going in, and then on the right, you can see the alkali heath being planted. And also really interesting, we noticed by the second year, a lot of the areas that are now bare because of the removal of the Algerian sea lavender are having volunteer alkaline heath that are resprouting and growing in those bare spots where we removed all the Algerian sea lavender. And this year, the first year of our outplanting, the second year of our 5-year project with the port, we have outplanted 14,000 natives. All right, the last part of our restoration project that we've been working on there, and one of the coolest in my opinion, has been the reintroduction of Sueta californica, which is an endangered species, into the park. We've been doing this work in conjunction with the Estuary and Ocean Science Center, which is part of San Francisco State University. And we've been doing it under the lab of Kathy Boyer and her research assistant, Margot Bookbinder. I put their contact information below because they're really the ones who've done the research for it, and we've helped them, and we've done the propagating in our nursery and the outplanting, but it's really been a collaborative effort with them, specifically those 2 people. So on the left, you can see the green vegetation in the middle of that photo is actually the Sueta that we planted in the first year. At this site specifically, we have seen a 98% survival rate of the Sueta that we planted. Yeah, we planted
about 100 and only 2 didn't make it. So as you can see, the ones that we put in the first year are actually, there's a couple that are almost 5 feet in length. So they've really taken off and really done really well there. And it's really cool, actually. The Sueda is now, it's now the largest population in the San Francisco Bay with the reintroduction, yeah, or the establishment of it. Yay! So that's a really big success story for us with the restoration. And then on the right is just a picture of the Sueda when we were propagating it in our native plant nursery that is located just down the street from Heron's Head Park. So yeah, we're really looking forward to the continuation of working for the port and the next 3 years of the resilience, the Shoreline Resilience Project. And yeah, I'm gonna pass it back to LeeAndrea and she'll give you a little bit of information how to contact us and follow our work that we are doing.
Thank you. Yeah, and thanks everybody for listening to our talk. And we just wanted to let you know that we have a table. You can come and visit us. We have lots of staff who will be there. And like I said, we doubled the footprint of our native plant nursery. So if you want to talk about growing plants with us or anything else, or if you're interested in anything about any of the programs you heard about, please stop by. Yeah, email us, visit our website, donate, follow us on Instagram. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next up, we have Harry White. And Harry White is a member of the Conservation Advocacy Committee of the Redbud chapter. He is a resident of Roseville and has been encouraging the city government to use more native plants since 2021. He is active in the Placer group of the Sierra Club and a member of various other environmental and fishing groups. His other interests include forest management, water conservation, and maintaining wild populations of trout and salmon. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's make sure I know how to navigate this correctly. Okay, here we go. Yeah, working with local governments to expand their use of native plants. Oh, okay. Can you hear me now? Yeah. Let's see if I can go back. Whoops, try it again. Working with local governments to expand their use of native plants. Okay. Yeah, so I've been working with the city of Roseville for about 1.5 years and also am now starting working with Placer County. And I'd like to share with you my experiences and what I learned in looking at CNPS resources. There's tons of super knowledgeable, experienced people, know loads about native plants, but I wasn't finding the resources that I needed to work with the city, to answer the city's questions. So I sense that there's a gap there. And so here I am trying to address that gap. Not that I'm an expert on either native plants or working with cities and counties, but I think there's a need for best practices and sustained effort to make improvement in these areas. So water is an obvious place to start. You know, hey, we can save you water and give you attractive plants and a lot of ecological value at the same time. Stormwater, cities want stormwater to drain back into aquifers. There's regulatory requirements. Native plants have been put in there. Parks and Rec will often give you a good hearing. They're interested in things like pollinator gardens, pollinator hedgerows, or reducing lawns. Where it gets a little tougher is city planning and development. So they will listen politely, but it usually ends up with, well, we have enough difficulty just getting the developers to meet our requirements for water use. And we already have an established plant palette, and it's tough to do anything beyond that. So I've embedded a couple of files. I don't really have time to open them now. Will attendees be able to access this presentation and open the files, by the way? So basics for engagement are show up at meetings, get to know your city's website, learn all the committee meetings, start attending, start doing the obvious stuff like spreading the gospel of native plants with regards to water and lawns and so forth. And I've got a sample letter for local government. So monitor and engage with city commissions. And one thing we're starting to do, landscape designers used by developers, they kind of hold the key. We've gotten pointed to them from a couple of different perspectives, like, you know, hey, have you talked to this big landscape company, because the developers will do what their landscapers tell them to do. So if you get in and get them on your side, then you can go places. Business development groups like a downtown business association may be surprisingly receptive, because they may have their own budget and their own interests, whereas the city is kind of ho-hum. But like developers or a business group in like Old Town Sacramento or Old Town Roseville might say, wow, yeah, native plants in barrels sounds like a great idea, and homeowners. So what we need, I think, in CNPS is to define best practices for a municipal engagement campaign. And per the September 7th meeting that Anne Marie and others had on urban chapters issues, a lot of good documents were shared in that. I've embedded some of them here. So we've made a good start on getting best practices, but they're not yet in a form that's going to be convincing to the cities, okay? So we need to work on best practices for approved lists of trees and plants. And even if there is an approved list, they may or may not use that. We need to address that. We can make an argument, hey, you guys can save water. We're giving you interesting, new-looking, attractive plants with habitat value. And flip the strip is a phrase that we can exploit. But so here's what I've run up against. So at some point, with the different groups in different ways, you're going to hear things like, well, gee, we don't really know how to maintain native plants. Or some people really don't like the appearance. Especially some times of the year. We can't use native plants because of that. Or, oh, they cost too much and we can't get the sizes we need, you know, blah, blah, blah. So this is my summary. Maintainability, survivability. Oh, use this? Okay, hello. Maintainability, survivability, availability, appearance, cost, and now flammability too. So we need to speak the language of the people in the cities. How about this now? Okay, yeah. We need to speak the language of the people in the cities and the counties, and those are the answers. Okay. Those are the answers that they want to get in a format they can understand. So we've got a lot of great documents. I think they'll be on the CNPS website. I want to dedicate my time to helping to move ahead, defining, implementing, and tracking best practices. So I would like best practices guidelines, documents, templates, talking points. And they may vary from place to place and depending on the audience. So Placer County is a red county, or purple at best. And so it's a little tricky situation. But proof of concept, I think, is what we really need. So if I can go to the city of Roseville and say, I'd like you guys to put native plants in a section of a park, okay? And by the way, this town in the valley, 30 miles away, has already done that. And here are photographs when they started, 1, 2, 3, 5 years in. Here is a detailed Excel spreadsheet showing all the plants that they used, how much it cost, how much they saved in water. Here is a maintenance guide that they trained their people in. If we have that kind of stuff, and I know it's a lot of work, and lay that out to them, then we're really getting someplace, right? I mean, that's the kind of thing we need to make good traction with cities and counties. So I'm happy to devote some of my time to doing that, especially for Roseville. Collaborations and partnerships are keys. So like the Xerxes Society was instrumental in getting in Placer County, a hedgerow of native plants, and other environmental groups worked on getting native plants into, into other areas. So I've deliberately made this kind of short and in a very summary form because I wanted to leave room to get your feedback. So priorities, strategy, tactics, and the path from persuasion to ordinance. I think that's key. So there's tons of work we still need to do in Roseville and Placer County on persuasion. Ultimately, I think, though, we're going to need ordinances and laws, probably at the state level, and what to do, like the administrative path versus the political path, right? And how do you balance that? So, yeah, this meeting can start the conversation, and then I think we need a forum to keep it going as I go ahead and I write my documents and presentations that I'm using for Roseville and Placer County, and you folks are writing yours, and we can feed on each other's expertise and then move ahead. So did I miss any main bullet points, do you think, on those previous slides? Not really? Okay, so yeah, so you guys are seeing the same problems. Okay, all right. So if there are sources of best practices, I would like to hear about it. So either me or Maya, Anne Marie, yes.
I just wanted to mention La Loma Native Garden in Modesto.
Okay, Native Garden in Modesto. Thank you. I have excellent note keepers in front. Thank you. Yeah. Yes. Yes. I'll tell you, hwhite1728@gmail.com. hwhite1728@gmail.com. Yes. One of you. Yes. Right.
And we decided to do something about it. So we have a 63-page guide, including lots of information, weed-based, health-based, tutorial, listed plants, native plant design, nurseries. And we approached every single city in that area and handed them the guide and talked to them about changing their plant list. And all of them were in favor of it.
Yeah.
That's 7 cities, but California has 500 cities.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm here, because we want to work with the state officials and get a guide out right on, their California state website.
Yeah.
And give them all the information that we're giving these people, tutorials, the whole bit.
Yeah, that's
And we're
exactly
saying
the kind of thing that we need to keep. Yeah, I
Yeah,
need
so
to
I'd
hear
like
your
to share it
details.
with anybody here. I can give you a copy of our guide, our website.
Yeah.
What? Oh. I'm Karen Hansen with the Sierra Club Santa Margarita Group in Riverside County. And I work in the Inland Empire. We have about 7 cities. And we're changing this, we've approached the 7 cities, their planning department, because they're in charge of giving a list to the developers. And Menifee is one of the fastest growing areas in the nation. They can't put in houses fast enough. So we're trying to change it because now they're using non-native plants. Hello. And so they're wiping out the food sources for the butterflies and bees, as you know. So that's what we're trying to do. And we're having some success because we have something to give them.
Yeah. Yes.
I have a card I can give you, and you can scan it. We have lots of information. I can just hand it out to you.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hi, I'm Christina Schoenbeck. I'm faculty at Chico, and I've been working with the city of Chico for about 20 years on this issue and have not made a lot of progress. And I'll tell you some of the major problems that I've seen. The first is that landscape architectures and urban foresters are not botanists. They're not trained in ecology, so they don't understand the need. I think that's huge. Second, many of the infrastructure that already exists in cities like Chico are too narrow and too small and too disturbed for planting native trees. So there are options. We need to think about small tree options. And working with planning commissions is really important because planning commissions are the ones who decide how big the planting strip is and make the developer. Also, if you don't know, to gain sustainability LED building platinum status, you have to have native plant gardening. So that's an incentive, as it turns out, on campus when they want to increase their sustainability rating. And also CEQA, not with a lot of teeth, CEQA does encourage the use of native plants, and I think that that needs to be strengthened and leveraged better. And the last thing, and I'm sorry if you're here, maybe Matt Ritter, I've spoken to him before. He manages a website at Cal Poly that includes many, many non-native and invasive species. And when I said, you need a better plant list, and they said, well, your Cal Poly colleague would disagree, it's very frustrating to have that.
Yeah. I think, Anne Marie, we're probably running low on time, right? Not much time left. Yeah, maybe one more question. The gentleman in the back with the black mask. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you for the work you're doing. We really appreciate it because it takes individuals to do that. And also, Friday at 1 p.m. in the conservation session, my name is Charles Miller. I'm doing a session that's talking about these things at a much bigger level in the urban level, Los Angeles. And one of the best practices we've done is we found that we need to do huge coalitions between stakeholders from all different kinds of groups to get cities to move forward. Right. And that's part of what I'll be talking about is combining, environmental groups, homeowners associations, neighborhood councils, scientific groups, anything you can, so that you can walk in a room and talk to a politician and say, I represent these 30, 40 groups. And then they actually take your meeting and they listen to you. And whether you're working at the smaller city scale or the larger city scale, it really starts with the coalitions. So thank you very much for what you're doing.
Well, thank you. That's great advice. Maybe one more question. Yes, the lady with the black mask.
Hi, my name is Katie. I'm a graduate student researcher at UC Davis. I have a poster downstairs. I have analyzed every single county general plan, every single word, finding every scrap of bit of policy and ordinance that can be used and is used to protect native plants.
Yeah.
A suite of existing policies, 58 policies, that can be used as model ordinance language for any county. And I would love to have a conversation with you if you come downstairs to my poster.
Okay. So I think we're about out of time. Wow, thank you. So clearly, I mean, this is why I wanted to leave this time for input, because Maya and Anne Marie, we need to have a forum for continuing this conversation. So hwhite1728@gmail.com. Sorry, it wasn't on my slides here. hwhite1728@gmail.com. But there needs to be somewhere on the CNPS website where these documents can be collected. And maybe the documents that are in the September 7th meeting, urban chapter issues discussion, I don't know if those are publicly accessible. But yeah, we can continue that. And yeah, I think that's it for now. Hey, thanks a lot, guys.
Thanks, Harry, for starting that discussion. If you missed those pieces, if you need to reach Harry, if you didn't get all of that, you can reach me also. I'm Anne Marie Benz. I'm on the state staff, and you can reach me at abenz, A-B-E-N-Z, @cnps.org, if that's easier as well. All right, we have 2 more speakers working on this topic, and it does take all the different levels if we're going to get this done. like we said, we need people who are growing, selling, planning, maintaining, installing, if we want these pieces done. So it's the local level going on up. So next we have Arvind Kumar. Say it. Great. He has led the Native Garden Project at Lake Cunningham Regional Park since its inception in 2001. It's a commitment. He has served on the Santa Clara Valley Chapter Board in several roles: the Publicity Chair, Gardening with Natives Committee Member, Going Native Garden Tour Committee Member, Chapter President, and the State Board Member from 2007 to 2012. So there's been a lot of different levels at this. So if you'd like to come on up, we're ready to talk natives.
Good morning. Can you all hear me in the back? Okay. I have a bit of a condition, so I brought my clicker along. His name is Ashok. He's also my husband as of June. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. Okay, I have 120 slides, so we have to do this quickly. So you got work to do. So for those who are new to San Jose, Lake Cunningham Park is a 200-acre park in the heart of East San Jose, and it's one of the largest city parks in San Jose. Next. It's located due east of the 101, 280, 680 interchange. Next. In the center of the park is a 50-acre human-made lake. Surrounding the park is a constant height berm, and the park was built in the 80s actually as a flood control project, but with attractions like Raging Waters Amusement Park, a skate park, and most recently a BMX bike track. It's a city park. Next. Here are some views of the lake in different seasons. Let's keep going. Let's keep going. Okay, so let's take a look at the ecological history of this site. Next. This map shows the natural lay of the land in San Jose around 1800, okay? The color-coded legend shows many different meandering, many different types of habitat: grassland, oak woodland, alkali meadow, meandering creeks and rivers, and occasional wetlands. Let's look closer at the blue dot in the middle. It's a shallow lake called Laguna Socaire. This was surrounded by wet meadows, dry grasslands, alkali meadows, and oak savanna. Many streams, you'll notice, never made it to the bay. They simply ended in willow groves, which are marked on the map as chicken feed. This is an artist's aerial perspective of San Jose from 1869. The major dominant natural feature is Coyote Creek. Laguna Socaire is somewhere in the upper left. This is a photograph of San Jose from 1896, a vast grassland studded with widely spaced valley oaks. Fast forward about 100 years, by 1969, the wetlands had been drained, the streams were channelized to go all the way to the bay, the edges of Laguna Socaire had been developed into an airfield, a golf course, and housing. What remained became a cow pasture and a dairy. These are comparative aerial photos of the site from 1939 and 2002. You can see that what was once flat was sculpted into a lake, hills, and berms. Next. Now, a tour of the native garden area that we've been planting in. The native garden covers about 2 acres at the southeastern corner of the lake. It's a project of CNPS Santa Clara Valley chapter and a part of the city's Adopt a Park program. And it is entirely volunteer maintained. From the Tule entrance, this is how the area looked in 2002. The slopes and meadows were bare. Next. And this is how it looks today. Thank you. A sign marks the dirt parking lot. That's the entrance to the garden. Next. This poppy patch faces Park Road, and in 2019, we had a good show. Next. Behind it is a sunny slope that was mulched, designed, planted, and irrigated by volunteers. In bloom, this dog star ceanothus was abuzz with bumblebees in March. The garden can be a very, very scenic place to volunteer. On the slope behind, a lemonade berry has volunteered. It thrives in the summer heat. It's Southern California's gift to the world. At the bottom, near the swale, salt heliotrope forms an extensive swath in May, and it thrives in clay and salty soils. It's one of the few native plants that are native to the site. We didn't plant it. In the same area, marsh goldenrod in October. West of the parking lot, you'll see chaparral nightshade, western redbud, golden currant, and desert willow. There's an accessible path that connects the parking lot to the inner lake path. There's an interpretive sign that marks the entrance to the garden. And in 2002, this was the landscape. It was essentially bare dirt covered with invasive annuals in the winter that the park staff would just mow. And this is what it looks like today. There's a bench nearby and soap lily flowers in May, and it's a real magnet for bumblebees and hummingbirds. Looking back towards the parking lot, there's a layered view of 3 plants: sage, ceanothus, coast live oak. Along the path, this is the view in midsummer. There's also the datura growing by that same path. California buckwheat starts blooming in June, and it's a real magnet for insects. In April, that same plant is just budding out. One thing we've noticed is that as the shrubs and trees mature and create shade, the annual invasives start diminishing on their own. So the mulch is helpful to control the invasives when the natives are young. But once the natives take hold, they're able to hold that space themselves. One of the joys for me of doing this is to observe the plants through the seasons. And I want you to focus on the Fremont cottonwood in the yellow box there. In November, the same tree. At its base is a patch of wood mint. Moving now to the Sycamore Hill area, this is the steep slope of a human-made hill of clay and silt, really, really dense soil, excavated from the bottom of the lake. It was once overrun with invasive annual grasses, thistle, and mustard. Now it is transformed. Seen here, toyon, blue elderberry, buckeye, sycamore. One of the 3 western sycamores planted by Inner Lake Path. These are also riparian, but usually inhabit the seasonally dry stretches of the creek. And it was only recently I noticed, when I looked up, how beautiful the flowers are. Next. At the base, there's a patch of alkali heath that is volunteering. Next. A patch of hummingbird sage. There are a lot of toyon shrubs in the garden, and not all of them are planted by us. Now the birds are helping us propagate the plant. Chaparral mallow has been really good for us for those dry, sunny, hot clay slopes. It just spreads by runners, forms thickets, 0 water, heat tolerant. So in my books, it should be over all the hillsides in our park. St. Catherine's lace also does very well at this site. One of my favorite trees, I want to share this with you, the story of this tree. The California buckeye, in May, it has lots of beautiful fragrant flowers, but in October, only dry leaves and forming fruit. In November, after a rain shower, it's the brightest thing on the slope there. And by December, it's dropped the leaves, it's dropped the fruit, and just beautiful silvery bark. In February, the leaf buds form, and they open. These pictures are taken a week apart, and you can see that some of the bracts are showing some very interesting behavior. 2 of the bracts are turning into full-fledged leaves, only 2. And again, by the next May, the transformation is complete when it's gorgeous and fragrant again. Next. Lastly, I want to take you to a picnic area that's very popular. Around the picnic area, we've planted natives. We mulched and we planted natives. There's some Zauschneria there. In a bed next to the picnic area, we planted some scrawny, small native plants, and we put some logs around it for protection. And 4 years later, the plants had grown, the logs had grown. One of the plants there is Point Sal sage, and it's really good for park landscaping. It's low, it's mounding, it's broad, and really no weeds grow where this plant grows. There's an Evans barberry nearby in March, very pretty, very prickly. And in July, it's covered with these beautiful berries, and not a single berry fell to the ground. They're all eaten. Walking back, there's a coyote bush forest we didn't plant. We just asked staff to stop mowing, and the coyote bush came back, and we just let it grow. And we are finding that young oaks and buckeyes and toyons are now growing in the shade of the coyote bush. Next. We're back at the accessible path. Some plants from this area, Bees Bliss sage in spring, Yankee Point ceanothus, California rose, and Great Valley gum plant blooming in September and October. The nearby coast live oak, people say oaks are not pretty, and I don't know what they're talking about. It's the most gorgeous tree. This is the only legacy valley oak in the entire park. It predates the park. And for us, knowing how prevalent and dominant it once was, in San Jose, it's particularly meaningful to protect this particular specimen and to reintroduce valley oaks throughout their historic range. Next. I want to share some pictures of critters we found in the native garden. Monarchs, we love monarchs, but we also get a lot of other fauna on the milkweed. Next. Painted lady, western fence lizard, black-tailed jackrabbit, fox squirrel, ground squirrel, Anna's hummingbird, black phoebe, Say's phoebe, white-crowned sparrow, golden-crowned sparrow, ruby-crowned kinglet in the yellow box there, bush tit, scrub jay. We get a lot of house finches, and I observed that they have their own unique way of biting into the toyon berries. They bite into it the way we would eat an apple. They take chunks of it. They don't eat the seed. The California towhee does the same thing, but on the ground. But the hermit thrush just pops it in, okay? And so does the northern mockingbird. And I asked him, and he told me his name was Rudolph. Cedar waxwings, we all know they love to eat toyon berries, but watching them in the native garden, I saw that they do fly catching. They're just as adept as yellow-rumped warblers. And finally, a yellow-rumped warbler on hollyleaf cherries. So basically, the message here for us was that the native garden has created a habitat that's supporting birds. And the birds are paying us back by propagating and spreading the seeds. So this ecosystem is beginning to function. A few slides about the people who worked to make this happen. In the early years, our goal was to plant natives to create habitat and to do this in a public area. But we didn't have a clear idea of how people were going to connect with it. Ashok and I have engineering backgrounds, and our gut instinct is, given a problem, problem solve. For us, the biggest lesson has been, and still is, that you can't do things of any significance without engaging people, and that good things happen when lots of people come together. And we show you. First 5 years, the plants were small, so you wouldn't know if there was anything there. The garden improved by leaps and bounds when Susan Sundberg joined. She brought her skill in horticulture, design, and a passion for habitat creation. In 2020, Ken D. Himes donated a ton of plants and bulbs to the garden and helped train our volunteers. Many high schoolers come to us via volunteermatch.org. bench installed by an Eagle Scout, Daniel Lau. Chapter board members come to visit, and we put them to work. In 2015, a group of young professionals in the area, Silicon Valley volunteers, started volunteering, and they were large crews. They came in large crews. They were motivated. They were quick studies, and they were phenomenally efficient. We got a lot of stuff done because of them. Since 2016, the chapter board member, Vicky Silvers-Young, has been leading bird and plant ID walks at the park on the first day of every season, 4 times a year. Next. On one of these walks, there was an attendee who said in June, this lakeside path is too hot, too sunny, and it needs shade-giving trees. And so we asked him, do you want to do this? And he said yes, and this is what he came up with. Next. So his name is Tilak. Here he is on the left. He led this 3-year-long project. Tree planting started in the fall of 2017, and there was a bubbler at every tree. So it was a big project. Phase 2 was completed in 2018. The third and final phase completed in 2019. So the oldest trees here have been in the ground 5 years now. Another volunteer, Clara, adopted a hillside, and she completely transformed it. And I had a great time making this GIF. Next. Steve Rosenthal was with us on one of these walks and noticed a huge patch of thistle. The next week, he showed up with tools and bags. And in 3 hours, 3 volunteers had cleared it all. And today, it looks like this. Next. Did you know weeding brings people together? In our case, it was stinkwort. Okay? We started working on it in the native garden area in 2018, and it's practically gone from that area. And we continued, and we managed to cover the entire park. It's about 99, 98% free of stinkwort. Volunteering has continued through the pandemic, masked and distanced. The age range is anywhere from 15 to 75. And a parent told us this is an opportunity for the kids to be away from Zoom, to be outdoors, to be with their friends, and they really look forward to coming. So a few final thoughts on the lessons we learned. First is get permission from the entity that has jurisdiction. Forget about guerrilla planting, just do it right. Next, native annuals, we didn't have good luck with them. So we focused on controlling invasives, non-native invasives, and we had much better luck with perennials, shrubs, and trees. Plan to water the young plants for the first 2 to 3 summers. Cage the young plants if you've got wildlife around to protect them. And pioneer plants and rhizomatous perennials are your friends. They are fighting weeds when you're sleeping, so they're really good for restoration. And there are some invasive perennials we were not able to control using mulching and pulling. So we had to call in for chemical control. A few thoughts on community. 1 minute left. Your neighborhood park or open space is the best place to start because you can now lean on your local neighborhood association and your neighbors and your friends. And what you want is to develop a core team which can make a longer-term commitment. This kind of thing cannot be done in 6 months or a year. You need to look longer than that. We found volunteers through Volunteer Match, and there's an organization called One Brick that's active in some cities. Be prepared to train unskilled volunteers. The 5 or 10 minutes you spend training them is really, really important. And enhance that experience, that volunteer experience, by interspersing the work with some play, some fun, some interpretation. And one thing we found is that people really clue in the moment you talk about habitat. You start with the monarchs, or you start with the birds, and then you ask, why is that organism here? What is the food that it's finding here? And a bulb goes off. People start seeing the connections. Last but not least, affiliate with your local CNPS chapter. We've had many, many benefits of chapter support and outreach. And finally, affiliate with existing agency programs, if there are some in your area, because that will bring additional resources. And you want them watching your back. You want their goals to be aligned with yours. Thank you very much.
One of the best things about being back at a conference is finding people who have the same ethics, the same goals, the same language as you, and being inspired and remembering the good in the world. One of the other really good things about being back at a conference is seeing the people that you've worked with that you're excited to see again. Peter, our next speaker, I don't know if you remember this, years ago, totally saved me when we were working on a workshop together when not only our first projector, but our backup projector both went out, and he was able to go and rescue it. And we were back then doing bay-friendly landscaping and gardening. So this is a similar piece. Peter Brastow, we're getting a little bit of feedback, I think, so I'm going to turn something off. That should be it. Okay. Worked for 10 years as a restoration ecologist for the National Park Service at the Presidio of San Francisco. GGNRA founded Nature in the City in 2005. Now serves as a city senior biodiversity coordinator at the Department of Environment, covering 15 city agencies to implement the Climate Action Plan towards a biodiverse city vision. And it is a big vision. So if you come on up and give us your next.
Oh my God, it's a full room. Hi, everybody. This is amazing. This is my first week back at work. I just took a sabbatical for 3 months in Europe, so I'm a little bit like, whoa, this is crazy. Let's see. Let's see if I can get my first slide on there. Oh, wrong way. Okay. So really excited to be here, and oh, what an amazing talk. Thank you, too, and congratulations to the happy couple. So it's kind of a lot of words in my title. There's kind of a lot to unpack there. So hopefully you read it beforehand. And if I don't cover something the way you thought I might cover it, then maybe you can, find me, interrogate me later. But I'm going to kind of do two things. I'm going to kind of give a version of what I have done many times, which is talk about nature and biodiversity in San Francisco, because I imagine there's quite a few of you here who have not been exposed to that particularly. It being a very small point on the map of California where people think of the city and don't think of nature. So I'm going to go through that a bit, and then I'm going to home in on our Climate Action Plan, Healthy Ecosystems chapter, as is stated in the title. So first, I thought I'd start with this kind of dorky photo, just to say that I'm going to talk a little bit about myself and a little bit of my journey, which will also kind of serve as a tour of some of our natural areas in San Francisco, this being Corona Heights, right above the Castro district. And so I started off in the Presidio, as was just explained in my introduction. This is the Coastal Bluffs, looking out the Golden Gate Bridge, Raven's manzanita habitat, if you're familiar with that federally listed plant. And so that's where I got started. This is really the biggest wildland in the city, in fact. And then was part of the project in 1995 to restore Lobos Creek Valley for the federally listed endangered San Francisco Lucinga in the dunes. So this used to look basically like a derelict ball field, and then was restored as dune habitat. This is many, many years later this photo was taken, so it's all, the Lucinga habitat is kind of all filled in. So at the Presidio, they're constantly making new Lucinga habitat because it's an annual and it needs open dune, of course. And then on the left are the coast live oaks of the creek itself. And then I also worked on Chrissy Field. I was actually the first Park Service ranger in charge of managing the project from 2000 to 2002, kind of right at the end of the installation phase, if you will. And this, as some of you know, is sort of thought of as a flagship ecological restoration project in San Francisco. And that's where I kind of, really dug into the whole idea of community stewardship, which you've heard a lot about today. This is a photo of volunteers pulling weeds out in the salt marsh in Chrissy Field. And so I spent 10 years leading groups like this, and really enjoyed and really kind of took in the whole concept of not only are you restoring habitat, you're restoring our relationship to the land, you're restoring relationships between people, And so it's all about stewardship. And just to say that they're still doing all kinds of amazing work at the Presidio. I left in 2004. This is a confluence of Tennessee, the branches of Tennessee Creek and what's called Tennessee Hollow in the eastern part of the Presidio, so where they're kind of trying to restore a whole watershed. And so go out to the Presidio. They just finished the Tunnel Tops project, and I mean, it's just constant, amazing ecological restoration still going on there. And so this is just a map to sort of show all the sites in the Presidio. It's kind of a microcosm of the whole city, but really kind of our biodiversity hotspot within a hotspot of San Francisco. And so when I was leading work days, we'd start at 9 a.m. on Wednesdays, and we use this toolkit pretty much at the beginning of every workday to say, hey, this is what the city used to look like, this is what we have left, this is what we're doing, this is why we're doing it. And you may not know, but this map was made in 1992 by Nancy Morita, so this is the 30th year anniversary of the Wild in the City map, which is super cool. And so there's some local luminaries listed on the bottom right there, so look up the Wild in the City map online and you'll see more about that. And so, but I brought this map up also to illustrate my kind of pull at the time in 2004, whereby I wanted to kind of work more in the heart of the city, not out on the fringes there at the Presidio and the GGNRA, which is an amazing place to work. But I was feeling the pull of the kind of depths of the city and the community there, and so I founded an organization called Nature in the City in 2005. These are blue Dix lilies up on Tank Hill, looking down on the Haight-Ashbury, where I used to live, to really to honor the historical legacy of all of our natural ecosystems, the pieces of which we still have in San Francisco, which you're going to see more of along the way here, and to honor the work that had been going on for many years by lots of other individuals. And this is actually Bayview Hill, looking out over Hunters Point Shipyard on the right, and that's Hunters Point Ridge right there. So thanks, Ledge, for a great presentation earlier today. And in the far right, you can just make out a little figure. That's Jake Sigg with his butt in the air pulling weeds on Bayview Hill, restoring the grassland. So yeah, and again, really for the purpose of homing in on and underscoring the whole concept of connecting people to their natural areas in the city, in their neighborhoods, and fostering stewardship. That's Twin Peaks on the right. And really to celebrate all of the great work that has been going on since the early 1990s by many different organizations. Ledge, as they said, since 1998. There they are represented on the right. I don't know if that's an old icon, or an old logo or what. Okay. But so many different city agencies represented here, the National Park Service, the Presidio Trust. Basically any local nonprofit has had some role in, probably not everybody's represented here, but I think I've got almost everybody, in fostering stewardship of our native habitats in San Francisco. So that's one of the reasons why I founded Nature in the City, to sort of celebrate all of that and to try to amplify it to the community at large and, of course, to our local government. And so then when I give this talk, I also like to kind of go out to the 30,000, well, it's probably more like 30-mile view of San Francisco to just show it situated in that sort of natural ecological context of the Bay Area, right? So yes, it's the second most densely developed place in North America outside of Manhattan, but it's in this context and it still has quite a bit of nature despite that. Despite being over 95% developed, this is basically what we have left. This is very stark. Obviously, this doesn't show all the nooks and crannies throughout the city, which you'll see in other maps later in the presentation. How do I get that dot to get out of there? Oh, here we go. Okay, don't need the dot. Yeah, so but this does give you a sense of, of kind of what we have left imprinted in the two-dimensional level in terms of the natural areas of the city. And within that, pardon me, within that, quite a bit of natural diversity. And these numbers are real, so if they look crazy, again, interrogate me afterward, I'll tell you where they're from. And I'll talk a little bit about a couple more of them in the presentation. But this is a snapshot in time, really, too, right? Like, yeah, we have this incredible diversity, but obviously in the context of a very highly dense city, so with all the threats, including lots of invasive weeds that we still have. And so we have to continue to be extremely vigilant to keep those numbers where they are and maybe grow them even. So since this is CNPS, I'll just go through a few plants. One of our favorites, Footsteps of Spring, some painted ladies on our local daisies there. And one of my favorites, everybody loves Phacelia californica. And then this is also Bayview Hill, looking out toward McLaren Park. Some buckwheat and poppies. Amazing display of Clarkia rubicunda. This actually might have been seeded, but seeded from local San Francisco seed. So you seed it and you steward it, and it still does really well. Again, one of my favorites, San Francisco wallflower. This is a CNPS rare plant. This is in the Presidio, right adjacent to the Lobos Creek Valley. And some repeats in terms of species here, but this is just to underscore that, what do we have in California? 6,500 or 7,000 native plants or something like that, on that order anyway. But in San Francisco, that little teeny pinprick of a place that's 95% developed, we still have 500 species, which is just mind-boggling to me. So I love to mention that stat. And of course, everybody loves butterflies. We have 35 species of breeding butterflies. We know that, of course, thanks to Liam O'Brien, whom probably many of you know. And including the federally listed endangered mission blue butterfly, which flies on Twin Peaks, as well as Blogger Ridge, Sweeney Ridge, I think, and the headlands. So it's endemic to the Franciscan bioregion, which is kind of represented by the Golden Gate National Recreation Area as parklands and other lands as well. But we also have this cool little critter called the green hair streak, which you might have heard that name over the years. And it just flies in a few places left in San Francisco, in the Presidio, and in an area called Sunset Heights, which is above the Sunset District, kind of to the east of the Sunset District. And we know this because Barbara Deutsch told Liam O'Brien to go look for it, and so he did, and he found it, still flying among some of these hilltops, which are shown here in a map that he drew back in 2006, on the right of these little hilltop natural areas, which are there and were saved because of people like Jake Sig and organizations like the California Native Plant Society back in the day to make sure that they weren't developed. And so as a result of finding this out and Liam presenting this to us, we were like, oh my God, what an amazing project. So we just started planting all those little red dot sites throughout the corridor, creating kind of an ecological, urban ecological corridor for the green hair streak, starting with sites like this. Public works street parks, kind of these derelict areas, you know, with dog piss and poop in between the streets. And so this is year one, totally transformed. This is quite a few years. This is 2007 maybe. And lo and behold, within, like in the first year, the butterflies are showing up in these sites and actually starting to lay their eggs. So these are San Francisco State students monitoring that activity. And you know, they're visiting all the nectar plants that we planted, including sea thrift, et cetera. And because we know that these funky novel ecosystems in the built environment can conserve flora and fauna. So that's one of the sites there on the right, also in the corridor. And so this was the second edition of the Nature in the City map that we made in 2007. And I like to use this, again, to emphasize that we're not just turning gray to green, we're trying to turn that gray to green to biodiverse, right? Which is the subject of today's session. So that's really what this is all about. And so, yeah, that looks really fun, and I'd love to be there. But what is all that green, right? What kind of green is that? Is that like some awesome invasive weeds like this one they planted on the hotel I stayed at in Singapore so that it would stay there and keep it green? Or can we somehow fit native plants into the built environment? And so this is the latest edition of the Nature in the City map from 2018. And this shows you a little bit more of kind of a visual vision, right, of what we're talking about and what we want for nature in the city. And so I'm just going to quickly go through, this is kind of some of the stuff we do in my current job at the Department of Environment. So just basically try to promote everything, all the great stuff that's going on. Like I said earlier, all the organizations, all the agencies. Find, Tend, Grow is a little thing that we put together on our website. Find the wild, tend the wild, grow the wild, and there's all kinds of links to what's going on. We've got a really progressive integrated pest management program, so we've been able to coordinate together and make sure that we're promoting biodiversity as part of that. 5 minutes, oh my God, okay. SF Plant Finder, so you can check that out. It's like CalScape, check that out later. So these are all the organizations that I work with in San Francisco. And we got a big boost in 2018 with a resolution that was passed unanimously at the Board of Supervisors. And you can read on the bottom there what the point of the resolution is. It's basically promoting biodiversity in the city on the part of all the different agencies. This is our vision statement that's in the resolution, again, unanimously passed by the board. And then, at the same time, in 2020, the UN said, hey, this next decade, last decade was UN Decade on Biodiversity. This one's going to be the UN Decade on Ecosystem Restoration. You heard all about 30 by 30 today. And in addition, the C40, which is an international organization of, used to be the 40 biggest megacities, but now includes many more cities, now has an urban nature campaign where they've gotten us to sign on to essentially 30 by 30 for cities. So we're really trying to contemplate what does that mean in the urban context, this 30 by 30 concept. So we're really excited about that. This is our climate action vision in the city of San Francisco. I don't have time to go over all this, but this kind of sets the stage for talking quickly about the climate action plan, which has 6 sectors, of course. This is a Paris compliant plan, which was published at the end of last year. And including a very robust healthy ecosystems chapter. So that's what I'm going to be focusing in on here. Has these 4 pillars, kind of 4 social pillars to ground it in what we need to do for people as part of climate, as fundamental to climate action, and doing it in a just and equitable way. And so this is kind of the statement at the beginning of the healthy ecosystems chapter. Healthy ecosystems provide nature-based solutions to climate change by sequestering carbon from the atmosphere and storing it in plants, trees, and soil. Stewardship of the city's natural resources helps restore biodiversity and provides a healthy environment that benefits all San Franciscans. And so that's actually really similar to the vision that we put in the resolution at the board several years ago, the one that I had up on the screen. So these are our 7 strategies in the Healthy Ecosystems chapter. Within these, we have 32 actions, and I clearly don't have time to delve into the actions. But if you just Google San Francisco Climate Action Plan, you can find it. It's a PDF. If you go to page 112, I think that's where the Healthy Ecosystems chapter starts, chapter 6. Yep. So you can kind of scan these just for a moment. I'll leave the slide up. But the bottom line is I basically saw this as an opportunity for us to put our biodiversity vision into the Climate Action Plan, right? So because, as has been talked about today, healthy ecosystems, restoring biodiversity, ecological restoration, connecting people to nature, that is climate action. So that's the argument I've been making, and luckily, I've been successful so far. So we need to fund the damn thing. So if you want to, if you have friends in high places in San Francisco, and give them a call, please. And of course, providing equitable access to nature being totally central to what we want to do with implementing the Climate Action Plan and the 32 actions among the 7 strategies. So just pivoting a little bit, we counted that there's 125,000 street trees back in 2016, I think. And then I did an analysis to see which of those were native. Less than 1% of the street trees in San Francisco are native, but here's what they are. We got 62 that are California natives, 13 that I called Bay Area natives, and then another 12 that are San Francisco natives as well, including Toyon and Oak and Buckeye and Madrone and Willows, et cetera. So that's just a snapshot of our street tree network, but within that, we do have a bunch of coast live oaks. 454 was the original count, and so we've been doing a project where we've been looking at every single individual coast live oak in the street tree network and basically collecting data to see how they're doing as part of saying, hey, we can actually plant coast live oaks in the urban environment. Guess what? So that's really exciting too, yeah. But the plan, the Healthy Ecosystems chapter, of course, is much more than just about trees, although we love some of our trees, like this coast live oak in Golden Gate Park. It's about all of our systems, right? Our grasslands, our shrublands, our maritime chaparral, wetlands, et cetera. So we really want to restore as much of that, all of that, as we possibly can. And biodiversifying the built environment. Thank you, I got 1 minute left. This is 1 South Van Ness, green roof. With actually all native plants. This was installed about 10 years ago, I think. And then just again, another kind of microcosm of San Francisco. This is one of the places I work now. I'm actually a restoration ecologist on Yerba Buena Island, so I have this whole kind of citywide policy hat, but then I also have an on-the-ground hat, like a lot of you, thankfully. And so this is the future vision of Treasure Island and Yerba Buena Island, all built out and all green, and so my job is to make sure that's totally biodiverse. And so we have these really cool natural areas on the island. Those are windswept oak woodlands right across from downtown. And this is an understory. And then this is Philistoma auritum, beautiful fiesta flower. Only grows on Yerba Buena Island in San Francisco. It's the very northern limit of the range. Super cool fact. So it's like our poster child for Yerba Buena Island. And so then I created this plant palette to say, hey, we want to take that biodiversity of Yerba Buena Island into all the built environment projects of Treasure Island as well, in addition to Yerba Buena Island. So we're doing that as kind of little pilot projects. This is next to the playground on Treasure Island. This is at the charter school, which is at-risk youth go to this high school on Treasure Island. And then this is the Presidio, but just another great example of a beautiful native garden in San Francisco. Time's up. So the whole point is to connect people where they live to nature so they can walk outside their door and enjoy nature-rich neighborhoods. This is one of our, I'm almost done. This is one of our actions, so basically amplifying native plant production, right, going forward in San Francisco because we need more local native plants to do this work. Creating big pollinator mega gardens and on campuses, wherever we can do that, transforming lawns, et cetera, right? And this is one of my favorites, so I'm almost done. This is, and thanks for staying, everybody. I know if you're like me, you're hungry, but here we go. This is LA, actually. This is a photograph of one of the public housing sites in Los Angeles, and the Theodore Payne Foundation worked with the city of LA, to plant native plants at 4 different sites. I don't know if they've done more since, but it's a really great model, and so I put this as one of our actions in our climate action plan to do the same thing in San Francisco. And just want to make a plug for Hidden Nature SF, which is a project that the San Francisco Estuary Institute finally got money for. We've been wanting to amplify that wild in the city map info and bring a lot more research and information to the historical ecology of SF. So this was the product. They couldn't get the whole city. They sort of got like 2/3. So we got to get the rest of the city. And yeah, I know, not the Southeast. And at the beginning of the project, I said, y'all, that's, perceptually, that's not the greatest thing in the world, but this is how they started. So, but you can see the rich tapestry of communities that we have historically in San Francisco. What a rainbow of ecology. And finally, one final plug. This is my last slide. For the Yerba Buena chapter, Mike Wood, amazing guy. 2020, he found himself in Hawaii. He was stuck in Hawaii, so he needed something to do. So he produced the annotated checklist of the vascular plants of San Francisco, just been published, April 2022. Amazing product that tells you all about the plants of San Francisco. So thanks for your time. Oh, and I've got a whole bunch of nature in the city maps. I don't have 150, but I've got maybe 50. So come up and get one.
All right, sessions reconvene at 1 o'clock. Grab somebody you haven't met yet for lunch. Everybody needs to meet somebody new here.